Hello, my name is Susie and I work as Youth Officer for Manchester Diocese, and I'm reflecting on Station 1, Jesus is Condemned to Death. Start with a reading from Mark's Gospel, chapter 15, verses 8 to 15. Now it was custom at the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. "Do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of self-interest that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do then with the one you call the King of the Jews?" Pilate asked them. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. I remember when I was younger, growing up with my brother, one of the most common phrases you'd hear around our home is, "It's not fair." When I thought I was being given less or treated differently, I would claim in probably quite a whiny voice, "It's not fair." I'd always think that I was right and that the world, including my parents and my brother, were against me. And as I've grown up a bit, I've gained some perspective in these areas of perceived injustice and see things quite differently. This first station of the cross brings us to the trial of Jesus, a trial of unfairness and injustice. Jesus has been handed over by the Jewish court to Pilate and is now before a crowd of people who are shouting for him to be crucified. No doubt there will have been people in that crowd who would have been waving their palms enthusiastically as Jesus arrived into Jerusalem only a week earlier. But now they have been swept up with the crowd and are calling for his crucifixion. Some of them might even have been in that crowd thinking that this seemed unfair, but fear for themselves, for their own lives, overwhelmed that concern. This Passover tradition for the people to choose one prisoner to be freed is carried out, and before them is Barabbas and Jesus. As the passage tells us, Pilate is driven to wash his hands of Jesus, taking no responsibility for the decision that has been made by the people, and Barabbas is freed. At this point, the journey of salvation takes its final steps. Jesus has lived in obedience to his Heavenly Father to this point, knowing that these steps would lead to this place and to this journey. As he makes his way to Calvary, he knows that this is the working out of God's plan for his people. But it involves sacrifice and death in order to bring new life. Our reaction to this injustice can range from outrage to immense gratitude, because here is the Son of God standing innocent but condemned, so that we can stand in the freedom that his death and resurrection bring. Because we can see just ahead, in the distance, the crosses on that hill, and know the suffering that will take place there. And it's right and important that we don't avoid it, but think and reflect on that journey. But we know that it's not the end, because beyond that hill is the light of new life, that horizon that brings hope, and the life-changing consequences of Jesus' sacrifice for us. New life, forgiveness, and hope. As we navigate this Holy Week in a very different way this year, nothing changes, despite the situations we find ourselves in. There is still injustice, suffering, and death. And there is still hope. Think about that hope this week as we journey to the cross and beyond. And let's find ways this week to bring that hope to others. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.